Hello, everybody. I am here this afternoon with another training program that I have been working on for quite some time. The last one that's on YouTube, I think I might have done about a year ago or so. That's my master class in just psilocybin therapy 101. And we have gotten a lot of feedback from both existing clients and potential clients, whether they decided to move forward with us or not, that the information was super useful. And at the same time, I've gotten some requests for more training for different types of training. So I am going to be producing 3 new videos today. I do like to break it up by topic so that it's not quite so long. And the 3 that I'm doing today, the first one is going to be a little bit more of a deep dive of how psilocybin works in the brain. I know that I have a prior one in the masterclass called the neuropharmacology of psilocybin. This is going to go just a little bit more in depth. It's going to definitely share with you all some things that we have learned as professionals over the last year, just in practice, not only in our clinical practice, but also just the research that our entire team continues to do, and some really interesting insights for some of the clients that have come in with non-traditional intentions, right? So I would say the majority of our traditional intention clients come in with depression, anxiety, complex trauma. And then some other clients come in for spirituality. Chronic pain has been a big one as well. And it's specifically some of the chronic pain clients that we've dealt with that has caused our team to want to dive a little deeper into what is the nature of neuroplastic pain versus structural pain. So in this video, I'm actually going to be doing that deep dive. I'm going to share my screen here in a second because I have a really cool temporary learning website. This is separate. It's just one page. It's separate from our Fractal Soul website, but I'm going to go ahead and send out the link to that in the newsletter that I send out a couple times a year. I mean to do it monthly and it doesn't quite happen, but that's okay. I know that we all get a lot of newsletters and spam in our inboxes anyway, so I really try to only send something out when I've got something big to share with our community. So that's going to be video 1, and then I'm also going to do another video introducing our new integration framework that we've been working on and have been rolling out. I'm really, really excited about this work because we have learned that roughly 70 to 80% of the overall sort of lasting effect happens during the integration window, that neuroplastic window after your session, not just what happens during the session. So we have a 4-phase framework that I'd like to introduce to you all. And this is something that you can use whether you are a Fractal client or not a Fractal client. You will get access to the full client library if you're one of our clients, but even if you're working with a different facilitator through the regulated program, or you're a DIYer or whatever your situation is, if you are into self-healing with psilocybin, I really wanted to just provide this knowledge that so that you can all benefit from it. So that is number 2. And then number 3 is going to be kind of a deep dive on complex trauma in particular. I'm going to share with you a workbook by Dr. Nicole LaPera. If you do not know who she is great. She has about 9 million followers, I think, on Instagram under the Holistic Psychologist. That's her handle. And she specializes in speaking and educating about complex, or also called compounded or chronic trauma. So we're going to go through parts of her workbook and I'm going to explain how compounded trauma is really kind of the foundation of what most people coming in to, seeking help through our services actually have, whether that is presenting as depression or anxiety or substance abuse or, whatever it is. Kind of the underlying foundation is chronic, compounded, traumatic set of events, essentially. So I'm going to go through that and I'm going to explain how psilocybin therapy really, really helps with complex trauma. So those are going to be the 3 videos. So having said that, let's go ahead and dive in. Okay, so hopefully you can see all of this. This is the screen that I wanted to share. This is a web page that I put together using an AI research tool. This is a deep research tool called Perplexity. They have something called Perplexity Computer, and it's basically just like Google search on steroids, essentially. Its specialty is doing deep and complex research all across the internet, in particular with not just blog level stuff, but actual like medical research and scientific literature. So I worked with that tool to produce this page and then also to partially produce the integration page that I'll introduce in a different video. But I wanted to go through this first. And again, you will have, this is a very interactive page, so you can click different things and read, and I'm not going to just read the whole page. So I will send this out with the newsletter. If you are on our newsletter, great. And I'll try to find a spot to link to it on our main page as well. So just in case you've come across this on YouTube and you're not part of our newsletter already, and you're not going to get that link, hopefully you can find it through our website. So first of all, I kind of wanted to just explain again how psilocybin reshapes the brain from the very first moment of ingestion. You're swallowing dried mushroom powder, to what are some of the applications and what is the experience like and how does it work in different regions of the brain. So that's the whole purpose of this web page. So, the first section is really just around, how does the mushroom get up to your brain? How does psilocybin get up to your brain? And again, I said that I wasn't going to sit here and read this entire section, so you certainly, once you get it, can click around. But essentially, in a nutshell, there's four stages, right? This first stage is around just the ingestion and the absorption of the physical mushroom. So dried psilocybin mushroom powder contains psilocybin, which you probably know. What you might not know is that psilocybin is actually inert by itself. It's called a prodrug. And this is obviously bound kind of within all of the chitin and the cellulose matrix of the mushroom itself. So when you swallow this, stomach acid begins the breakdown. If you put your mushroom powder into something acidic like orange juice or lemon juice, the same process starts to occur, right? It needs an acidic environment to start breaking it down into psilocin. So that happens basically, starts in the gastrointestinal tract, within about 20 minutes or so. After that, what we really need to do to convert psilocybin to psilocin is we need to take away the phosphate molecule. So that happens partially in the liver, partially in the lining of the small intestine. But once it becomes psilocin, it's structurally similar to the neurotransmitter and hormone serotonin. I'm reading right here. It's called 5-HT. That's the shortened version of serotonin. And so it really differs only a little bit. And so it kind of becomes a specialized key fitting into a lock. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit down the page here. The half-life of psilocin is approximately 2 to 3 hours, so that's important to know that the overall journey usually lasts about double that time. It usually lasts about 6 hours, 5 to 7 hours being kind of the give and take window there. So after it is converted into psilocin, then of course it can cross the blood-brain barrier. And this is when it actually comes up into the brain and it starts proactively kind of inserting itself as a key into the lock into what's called the 2A serotonin receptor. It has a special affinity for 2A. And then that's basically what I just said. We like to call psilocybin or psilocin a kind of a Trojan horse for serotonin. It impersonates serotonin. It's not exactly the same as serotonin. And I want to actually get through that in this next section. So essentially, psilocin is very structurally similar to serotonin. It's enough so to dock into its receptors, right? That key in the lock that we talk about, but there is a slight molecular difference. And so that creates a different signal. So regular serotonin, it basically binds and releases from those receptors pretty quickly. So that is what produces kind of the standard neuromodulation in day-to-day life. The receptor opens, it binds, and then it closes pretty rapidly. Psilocin is different. It actually goes in there. There's what we call a persistent activation, right? So this fits the binding pocket, the lock, a lot more deeply, and it persists longer. And it also triggers a stronger and more sustained response, essentially. And what is that response? This is something that a lot of people aren't aware of. They know that psilocin or psilocybin, however you want to call it, is very similar to serotonin, and they think that it's the serotonergic effects that are directly responsible for the psychedelic effects, which is not actually true. What happens is it docks into the serotonin receptors, but the cells that hold the serotonin receptors, then you can see right here in this number 3, what happens is when those get activated, it stimulates a massive glutamate response. Glutamate is a different neurotransmitter. So it's sort of like psilocin comes in, docks at the serotonin receptors, the cells then get activated and they release a lot of glutamate. So it's really the glutamate flooding or that massive release that leads to the psychedelic effects. And this explains why psilocybin and like ketamine therapy, they have wildly different upstream mechanisms, but the downstream sort of glutamate effect is similar. And this is what leads to the psychedelic feeling or the psychedelic effects. So I just wanted to explain that. And then that part is important because it's not actually serotonin that results in the neuroplasticity, it's glutamate that results in the neuroplasticity. So really, it's the amount and quality and length of time that the glutamate is released that is associated with the neuroplastic window, right? So this glutamate surge upregulates BDNF, which is basically the growth factor of the brain, and this is what really enhances the synaptic plasticity. And the difference between psilocybin or psilocin and ketamine is that ketamine really the neuroplastic window only lasts a day or two, so it doesn't have as prolific of effects. On the other hand, psilocybin has a neuroplastic window of roughly 3 to 4 weeks. And so this is why you'll see with ketamine therapy, a lot of times they want you to come in for an initial series of 4 to 6, maybe like weekly. And then after that, you have to stay on maintenance for your monthly, biweekly or monthly, depending on your mechanism, kind of on an ongoing basis. It might be like it, for forever, essentially. So psilocybin is not that way. It's not meant to cause maintenance requirements, right? It's really meant to be kind of a one-time interventional thing. So that is a very big difference in how psilocybin therapy and ketamine therapy work. So just wanted to explain that. This is a really cool part of the page. You can click around to different areas and you can see where psilocybin impacts the brain, different areas of the brain. So we're going to kind of work our way down. The first one is the prefrontal cortex, right? And you can see over here that the 2A, that type of serotonin receptor density is very, very high in the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is potentially, well, not potentially, it is your brain's, I think I meant to say essentially, not potentially. Essentially, it's your brain's executive functioning, right? And so this is the narratives that you carry. It's a large part of what we call the default mode network. A large part of that is in this prefrontal cortex. And so you have these narratives, these top-down narratives, right? I talk about this a lot with my clients in prep and in our consults that we have an executive functioner, like a CEO in our brain, that is very tops down. It's the boss. It's telling you how things are. It's telling you what reality is, and there's really no room or wiggle room for discussion. That is your brain's kind of controlled, stabilized hallucination, if you will, of your version of reality, right? And there's usually very, very little wiggle room, like I said. So what psilocybin does is it comes in, you can kind of see this right here. This fundamentally changes how we construct meaning and reality in the sense of, I don't mean like the walls around you, right? Like I don't mean physical reality, but the reality of who we are, how we show up in the world, what is the world like? What are other people like? What are relationships like? All of those beliefs are narratives essentially that you can fundamentally alter with psilocybin. So you can do these things like narrative deconstruction, right? So old stories that you have that maybe started to form throughout childhood, you can step up out of those and kind of do more of a bottoms up, like, hey, let's not just listen to this boss, this like old programming. Let's actually maybe insert some new programming. So you can also do novel meaning making. You can, generate a lot of insights through the prefrontal cortex. And certainly, as I spoke about, you're just loosening a lot of that rigid cognitive and behavioral patterns. So that is all what happens in the prefrontal cortex. We also have the parietal cortex. So this is what integrates sensory information and contributes to our sense of body awareness and body ownership. So people who have the type of trauma where they had something, an assault against the body, or if they have some sort of dissociation or body dysmorphia, this is where psilocybin can really help with those types of clients. Because when you take psilocybin, a lot of times you'll have a body boundary dissolution, which sometimes means that you feel actually more in your body if you felt dissociated from your body. You're also going to have heightened sensitivity to tactile awareness and just in general, like somatic awareness, where you feel very, very embodied in your body. And this can also lead to a sense of unity and a reduced kind of boundary of like self versus other, right? So this is where a lot of our clients feel very connected to other people, to animals, to the world around them. There is that sense of kind of like unity and connectedness. So that is where this is happening. The visual cortex is also very high now. This is very recreational, I would say. People want to see the pretty pattern, geometric patterns in their eyesight, open eye visuals, or they might want to be out in nature where everything is very bright. When we are working internally in the psyche, we actually always coach our clients to kind of disregard this piece, but it is important to know that both open eye visuals and some closed eye or like mind's eye visuals can happen, especially at the more therapeutic doses that we typically use. So that is that. Angular cingulate cortex, or ACC for short. This is also very, very high. This one is really interesting because this is our brain's pain center, right? So when psilocybin docks to 2A receptors in this area of the brain, I wanted to point out, for example, there's a fibromyalgia trial that happened in 2024 where they injected psilocin directly into the ACC of the brain, and they found that 100% of the participants reported a reduced pain severity. And so this is really getting to the heart of like neuroplastic pain versus structural pain, right? And it is, I will fully admit, this is a new kind of frontier of ongoing clinical research and also just in terms of like, real world operations, like what we're doing with real world clients. We have found that a lot of clients who have neuroplastic pain, meaning pain that kind of lives up in the brain in terms of expectation and rumination and catastrophizing, that sort of thing, we can really find that their levels of pain can be reduced. Now, of course, this isn't like some miracle cure. It doesn't like help with structural pain, right? So this is only talking about neuroplastic pain. But if you are interested in, potentially reducing neuroplastic pain or changing your relationship with chronic pain, this is an area of really promising research. So just wanted to let you all know that. What have we not gotten to yet? Temporal lobe, this is auditory. This is going to have definitely enhanced emotional resonance, vivid memory recall, autobiographical in particular. So some of our clients will have journeys where it's very autobiographical. It's like they go back to childhood and then they're sort of like not reliving their life, but they're kind of recalling their life, and it's very chronological. And a lot of times they'll actually speak out loud and kind of talk through the major elements of their life from like birth through present day. So clients who have that type of journey, it's because this temporal lobe has been really, really strongly activated by the psilocin. And for the last ones, we have the thalamus, right, which is kind of disrupted sensory gating. More information is entering your conscious awareness. This is what I like to talk about as the switchboard operator. Normally, you have a switchboard operator that basically says you can talk to you and you can't talk to you, different areas of the brain. It tells the areas of the brain who can talk to each other and who can't talk to each other. And for a while, this switchboard operator essentially kind of goes offline. And so that means that the different areas of the brain now can have a heyday talking to each other, which is fun. Obviously, it can result in a little bit of some unpredictability of like what's going to talk to what, but this is very classic psychedelic effect. Um, so yeah, and also there can be flooding of normally suppressed, sensory and emotional signals. So this gets into kind of the heart of a common fear, which is what if I have a bad trip, right? This is why I always tell people more is not better, because the more psilocybin you take, the deeper that flooding is going to be, and we want you to be appropriately not overwhelmed, not underwhelmed. I always like to joke like appropriately whelmed, like kind of right in that middle. We want you to have profound healing and insights and a bit of flooding, right? Because a lot of people are dissociated or they've been repressing things or like holding things away. So we want to break down that barrier, but we don't want the flooding to become so overwhelming that you end up feeling overwhelmed or panicked, or you just kind of like want to tap out. You just like want the journey to be over. So there is a tip over point. And that's why we create custom dosing plans with all of our clients. And we really talk through in detail what they're expecting, what their fear level is, what physical blunting factors could be like medications. And so we'll talk through that for about 15, 20 minutes to kind of arrive at a custom dosing plan for all of our clients. So that's what happens in the thalamus. This is a very, very, very promising one for trauma in particular, the hippocampus and the amygdala. This is sort of the heart of the limbic system. I talk about the amygdala a lot, and Dr. Nicole LaPera in her CPTSD workbook also talks about the amygdala as being the brain's fear detection center or threat detection center. So what happens with psilocin is even people that are very hypervigilant and uptight, that means that their amygdala is sort of overactive. It's constantly firing. Like this could be a potential threat, or that could be a potential threat, or any second there's going to be a potential threat. And this is what causes people to be hypervigilant. And like this is kind of the heart of anxiety, right? So when we take the psilocin, it comes in and it actually quiets the activity of the amygdala, and that usually comes across as such a relief. That feeling of just calmness and quietness from a very usually noisy, active brain. So that is a hallmark of a psilocin journey as well, psilocybin or psilocin journey. And then sometimes, when memories have been stored in the limbic system because they were traumatic, the brain was too overwhelmed by them, and so they're kind of fragmented off and they're stored somewhere else. They're not stored with like the regular autobiographical memory of our life. Um, this is speaking to the memory reconsolidation window. You can actually take old fragmented memories that are associated with super overwhelming emotions, like fear, that are the hallmark of traumatic experiences, and you can separate the emotion from them. And so that gives you a chance to sort of process the memory and to bring it under one roof, for lack of a better word. So you can really kind of do some whole person integration in the psilocybin therapy as well. And then, of course, usually with that feeling of calm is an increased sense of compassion, a sense of self-forgiveness, especially if you've been doing like grief work or anything like that. So this is one of the more special, I would say, mechanisms of the brain that a lot of our clients are super just relieved and grateful for afterwards. And then the last one is the cerebellum. That's kind of a little bit more low. This is responsible for some of the side effects. So sometimes at the height of a journey, people need to like get up off the sofa bed and they need to use the restroom or whatever. And you're not generally like completely incapacitated. You can get up and walk around if you need to. But when you stand up, you might be kind of mildly off balance. You might have some coordination challenges. There might be some, motor effects. We also have seen things like some muscle twitching. We've seen a little bit of like some dizziness, some spinning. Sometimes like muscles will kind of get tight, or like the jaw might get tight a little bit. And that's basically the cerebellum being activated. So those are just temporary side effects. Um, okay. And then I also wanted to go down here and just kind of, again, you guys can play with this all you want, but this I thought was a really cool window of showing you what to expect from zero, from pre-onset all the way through, 8 hours, by at which point you'll be back at your lodging. We don't generally keep people for 8 hours. We usually keep them for about 6 hours, but again, it kind of just depends. So, this is going to show kind of the neuroactivity, the therapeutic depth, and then any somatic intensity. So this is kind of the anticipation and preparation, and then the onset. Early onset usually happens around the 45-minute to 1 hour mark, and you can kind of see things starting to happen by about the 2 hour mark or so, 2 to 3 hours. Again, remember 3 hours is about the half-life of psilocin. You are going to have maximal activation of those 2A receptors. So this is where the default mode network is going to be really profoundly disrupted. Glutamate is flooding the cortical circuits, the brain essentially, right? Especially in that prefrontal cortex. So this is really that window of deepest access into global brain communication, narrative processing, identity work, core identity work, not the identity that became our trauma-informed survival layer, right? Like the social survival, but what's underneath that? Who are you, who are you without your trauma and without your adverse experiences? This is the heart of where you can do that processing. Okay, and so that lasts usually a couple of hours, and then usually by about the 4 to 5 hour mark, you're kind of on the downside of things. Neural activity is starting to settle. I mean, it's going to remain elevated, but usually you're not going to feel things so intensely. So on the other side of it is usually when people start feeling a little bit more calm. They might still have insights coming to them, emotions coming to them, but it's not quite so profound, feeling like you're like kind of ripped into like a good movie or something that happens in the peak of the 2 to 3 hour window. So that's the integration plateau. Sometimes around the like 5 hour mark, some of our clients actually are ready to kind of start talking to their facilitator about what happened. They might want to start like reflecting. This isn't a time to go into deep processing, by the way, because by about the 5 hour mark, your brain has run essentially a marathon. And so we want the brain to rest. But if you just want to kind of document or like tell your facilitator, especially if you were silent, this is a good time to do that before you leave the center. And then sometimes people also want to like drink water, have a little snack, that sort of thing. And then usually around the 6 hour mark is where we let people go. That's kind of this gentle re-entry, right? And so we want to make sure that there isn't a lot of neural activity or somatic intensity happening when we let people go back to their lodging. And then the return usually happens around the, 7 to 8 hour mark where you're really down. You're still getting a lot of therapeutic depth, and that will happen for a couple of days. But the neural activity and the somatic intensity are pretty much very, very mild by that point. In fact, usually people are ready for a hot shower and like a really warm, nourishing meal, and they kind of just don't want to be in the room at the center anymore where they can't have those things. So that's why we don't generally keep people past about the 6 hour mark as long as they don't have really, really slow metabolism. Okay, and then this is the last part of this is the last couple parts of this page. I'm not going to go through all of this because I don't want to make this video super long. But if you want to, you can click on these and it kind of explore either the mechanism, if you're interested in the science behind it, why on earth does it, everyone has asked like, well, why 2A? I don't understand. Why does it have this special affinity for 2A and what's going on with the serotonin system in general? So this is going to go through some of that. These two things, again, this speaks to pain in the brain's circuitry. So if you are interested in chronic pain, you certainly can explore a lot of the evidence here, right, about specifically neuroplastic pain, not structural pain. And then my favorite is the dissolving of the self, right? This doesn't refer to leaving no self behind where you don't know who you are. This is more about dissolving old harmful narratives, programming that you think is true that isn't true, and it's hurting you, it's keeping you stuck, right? So exploring what the default mode network does, it does have a benefit, but sometimes we need to disrupt some of those harmful ruts just to be able to kind of break free and live a happier life, right? So yeah, so this is just more information that you can read about if you want to. Um, there's a section on effects and why they happen. The therapeutic effects is what everybody's after. The somatic effects are sometimes undesirable, right? So if you have nausea, if you have some muscle twitching, if you have some jaw clenching, if you have chills or you get hot, right? Temperature dysregulation, modestly elevated heart rate, and then yawning and head tension is also a very, very common thing. We call it the mushroom yawnies. So those are all very common and very typical in especially the early onset of the journey, that first, couple of hours. So those are some of the somatic pieces. And then you can read through some of the therapeutic effects and the therapeutic benefits as well that I've been speaking about. And there's a special section here on trauma-informed and neuroplastic pain, which again is a really exciting area of emerging research. But we have had a few clients where they came in with kind of a secondary intention and it didn't do a whole lot, but we have also had a handful, I would say, maybe 8 to 10 clients so far that, I always tell them there's no guarantees, come in with another intention as well, but they really have been able to reduce their amount of neuroplastic pain, sometimes profoundly after one psilocybin journey. So it's pretty exciting. Then we have a little section about the set and setting, how important that is, the presence of your facilitator, the actual room and the environment, and then the intention setting. And finally, we have some safety considerations, and these are things that will happen sometimes in a DIY or a recreational or like a festival context. And these are all definitely things that we control for in a professional regulated setting. So that's just important to know. So I will end that there, but I'm going to send this out and you all can just click through some of this fun interactive stuff and read as you want. So let me go ahead and stop this share. And then the next video I'm going to record is going to be about the complex trauma, and we're going to go through parts of Dr. Nicole LePera's workbook on complex trauma, and I'm going to talk specifically about how psilocybin is really geared specifically. It's a specialist in helping release some of this complex trauma. So I can't wait to get to that. I'll see you guys soon.